The Fucking of Gerard Rennick by the Liberal Party of Australia, Part 2. The first episode, you heard me mention that in July of 2023, during the LNP State Conference in Brisbane, Senator Gerard Rennick lost his bid for the third spot on the Senate's ticket to Treasurer Stuart Fraser by a narrow margin. Rennick raised concerns about the integrity of the pre-selection process, alleging grave irregularities, including claims that an ineligible delegate was permitted to vote and that standard voting procedures were not properly followed. I was at that 2023 convention when the vote happened, and it was dodgy as shit, and everyone in the room knew it. Before Rennick kicked off the legal proceedings, though, they anointed Stuart Fraser in front of a room at convention to take Gerard's place. Now think about this. Gerard was an elected sitting senator with 600,000 followers on social media.
LNP Treasurer Stuart Fraser will replace him in the third of 6 spots on the ticket.
I think it's always surprising when people give that amount of confidence in you and support, so definitely surprised.
Fraser wasn't the former treasurer, though. He was the treasurer, is the treasurer, and at that time gave the treasurer's report at the 2023 convention and at the 2024 convention. He never resigned his position as the LNP treasurer in Queensland, and that was a massive conflict of interest, according to some people. What followed then was legal proceedings that commenced in the Supreme Court in Queensland. After the LNP's Internal Disputes Committee dismissed Rennick's appeal, citing procedural grounds, Rennick escalated the matter to the Supreme Court. In June 2024, Justice Glenn Martin dismissed the case, ruling that Rennick had failed to lodge his legal action within the required timeframe. The court emphasised that internal party disputes are generally not covered by the court unless they involve legal rights or obligations. Translation to that is that the LNP is above the law. It can do pretty much whatever it wants, and the court has no jurisdiction over what it does internally, whether that be right or wrong. Quick recap of the timeline here. Mid-2023, Rennick loses his pre-selection for the Senate seat, for the third spot on the Senate ticket in Queensland, and is then not eligible to run for the LNP in the Senate. Instead, they installed Stuart Fraser, who you've heard me mention previously. Rennick appeals to the LNP with regards to the way the vote is handled at convention, because it was dodgy as shit and everyone knew it. But they dismissed his appeal, said he didn't lodge it in time, and that because of procedural matters, he could just go and fuck himself. And then he decided to take him to court. He took him to court on his own dollar, dropped some money, and then went to the Supreme Court in Queensland, at which point the Supreme Court ruled that they have no authority over the LNP and what the LNP does internally within the party. The LNP can do whatever the fuck they want, and the court has no jurisdiction over it. Rennick goes back to the mid-2024 convention, and I was there as well, and appeals his case to the room and brought in some great heavy hitters like Senator Matt Canavan, who stood up in Gerard's corner and appealed to the room to allow Gerard to have the opportunity to have a revote for that Senate position. Now, I watched Stuart Fraser stand up in front of that room and make the case why he should be selected as the third spot on the ticket. And I watched this go backwards and forwards like a tennis ball at the Australian Open until eventually we had almost every sitting LNP member in Queensland stacking up against Gerard at the microphones. They did not want him to speak, and they tried to shut down the debate. Let's not make this thing out to be bigger than, Ben-Hur. All Gerard was asking for was a revote. All the people that were stacking up for Gerard were asking for one thing and one thing only. Because of the dodgy procedures at the convention in 2023, all we wanted to see was a revote. And even Peter Dutton supported that revote, having another opportunity to clear the air and do it properly. And had Gerard lost that revote, he would have bowed out like a gentleman gracefully. I know he would have. You get into politics because you think that you're going to be able to make a difference. Gerard Rennick went to Canberra as a senator for the Liberal Party because he believed that he could make a difference to tax policy in Australia and help Australians build more wealth by sorting out the way that money is sent overseas, offshored, and hidden from the ATO here by big multinationals and corporates, because he used to work for them. So he understood the tax loopholes and he knew how you were being fucked because of rules in Ireland that allowed insert deletion here while I call that multinational company in particular a bunch of lying fucking crook. Profits offshore and not pay any tax here in Australia. And trust me when I say that there are hundreds of multinationals getting away with that here, and you're paying more tax because of it. Now, he went down there to do that, and then COVID happened. And the mark of the man is that he stood up for you, for the people. Now, what do? The Liberal Party's fucked you. The court's given you no ability to appeal. The party screwed you over a second time at convention. What do? What do you do? He walked and he started his own party, the Gerard Rennick People First Party.
If you vote for a minor party like myself, I will be an insurance against the Liberal and Labor parties. If you don't trust the two major parties, and I certainly don't, and I've been inside them, then you need to make sure that in the Senate, you cast your vote with a minor party that actually has solutions, not just around some of the more red meat issues like COVID and climate change, but we also need to be able to deal with tax and monetary policy. And I think that is where my point of difference is that I'm the only party, both big and small, who actually has a vision and 5 simple plans to help empower you and your fellow Australians live a better life.
It's always going to be an uphill battle for Gerard to be re-elected back to the Senate, but he fought valiantly. With very little time, minimal resources, and a shit ton of awesome volunteers, he did his absolute best. Now let's not forget, the Liberal Party knew they would never re-win that 3rd Senate spot again, and they sacrificed it willingly to get rid of Gerard. So Gerard did the right thing by running as an independent. It was just a shame that he had to run against Malcolm Roberts for that spot. But now the voting numbers are out. The Senate's finished being counted. Malcolm has been re-elected. Gerard missed out. We find out what the true voting numbers were. And this is the absolute shame of it all. The Liberal Party arseholed this man because they didn't want to listen to what he was saying. The truth bombs were way too heavy, and they installed this party apparatchik instead. But based on the vote count after this federal election, this is what should have happened. The Senate race that should have gone to Gerard Rennick if he was still in the Liberal Party. Now, the LNP spin machine will tell you that he didn't have the numbers, that it was all fair, that the people had spoken, and that he wasn't going to be pre-selected again. What they won't tell you is this: that Rennick got 150,000 personal votes, and that's not just noise, that's actual momentum. That's a base of people screaming to be heard. But because the party dumped him completely and didn't give him the 3rd spot on the ticket, giving it to this guy instead, those votes went fucking nowhere. And here's the real kicker in that: if Rennick had have been placed 3rd, just 3rd, the preference flow would have played out differently. Malcolm Roberts from One Nation would have been knocked out before Rennick was, and when that happened, Roberts's preferences would have flowed to Gerard, pushing him over the line. That's not the theory, that's the actual maths, and it's right there in the AEC count order line by line. Instead, the LNP ran Stuart Fraser, a nobody with 90% less support as their 3rd candidate, and the result? They gifted One Nation the seat, which is exactly what they wanted. This wasn't just political cowardice, it was fucking deliberate sabotage. They didn't just want Rennick gone, they were willing to lose a Senate spot to make sure of it. And that's the real story here. So what's the next chapter in the Rennick story? We know what the 2 major parties are. They are completely and utterly corrupted. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in those parties are corrupted. There are some fantastic and wonderful people that I've met through my time in the LNP, including making good friends with people like Senator Gerard Rennick. But unless you can find a way to get into that HQ and completely and utterly have a party in there and a revolution of some description, you guys are never going to be able to go anywhere. And that's the 2-part series of the story of Gerard Rennick, which almost tied in with my time in the Liberal Party and my experiences of watching them fuck over a good man. I hope this has helped you. I hope this goes on the record for future people to understand that the 2-party system in Australia, it's pretty crook, mate.